Hello, and thank you for taking a few minutes to learn about this module on women's health and nutrition. My name is Dr. Juhi Gupta, and I teach women's studies at Aligarh Muslim University. For most of my working life, I have been interested in trying to understand the complexity of women's lives and experiences in the world, and to help remove some of the structural barriers that make women's life more difficult than they need to be. And healthcare is one of those areas where life shouldn't be as hard as it is. Despite the fact that we know so much about medical and health sciences today, it is frustrating and somewhat depressing that our understanding does not always work to improve the everyday lives of women. We have decades of medical science. We understand in extraordinary detail how the female body grows, functions, bears children, recovers, and ages. And yet, across the world, and very visibly here in India, women's health is too often misunderstood, under researched, and quietly set aside. The default assumption in medical circles sometimes seems to be that women are just smaller men with a slightly different anatomy and that they can essentially be treated the same as men. The research and the clinical trials have often focused on men's experiences above women's, and some of that learning and some of the treatments just do not transfer well into women's lives. But now we realize that things really still have not changed all that much. That gap between what we know about medical sciences and what care women actually receive is what this module is all about. So let me tell you a little about why this course exists, what you will study, and what kind of person will, I think, find it most useful. Let me start with the why. The reason this module matters is that women's health is rarely treated as a whole. It tends to be sliced into pieces. A reproductive system here, a mental health label there, a workplace problem somewhere else entirely. And each piece is handed to a different specialist who may never speak to the other. But a woman does not live her life in pieces. Her body, her work, her mind, and her circumstances are bound together, and they shape one another constantly. The exhaustion of a demanding job, the stress of caregiving, a hormonal shift, a poor diet, a dismissive doctor, these issues intersect and interact. They do not live in separate rooms. This module asks you to look at women's health as women actually experience it, as one connected story. There's also a harder truth behind this course. For a very long time, medicine took the male body as the default and treated the female body as a variation on it. Women have been underrepresented in clinical research. Their symptoms more readily dismissed as emotional, their pain more often disbelieved. The result is a real measurable knowledge gap. Women's conditions are consistently diagnosed late. They're given treatments calibrated for bodies unlike their own, and their suffering is all too often normalized simply because it is common. Part of what we do on this course is to name that gap honestly and to learn to think past it. So let me tell you what we will actually study here. We begin with reproductive health because it is so central and so often reduced to a single chapter of a woman's life. We look at it across the whole lifespan, from adolescence and menstrual health, through fertility, pregnancy and childbirth, and onward into menopause and years beyond. You'll come to understand these not as isolated events, but as one continuous art, each stage shaping the next. We examine the conditions that are still too frequently overlooked or diagnosed late, and we ask why that happens and what better care would look like. Later, we turn the mental well-being, which I consider inseparable from physical health, rather than a topic to be added on at the end. We look at the specific pressures that shape women's mental health, the mental load of running household and caring for others, anxiety and depression, and the points in life where women are most vulnerable to them. the emotional dimensions of reproductive experiences, and the stigma that still keeps so many women from seeking help. We treat the mind and body as the single connected system they really are. We also look into the workplace, where many women spend the largest share of their waking lives, and which the health conversation has been remarkably slow to take seriously. We examine the realities of working life, the physical and emotional toll on the double shift of paid work and unpaid care, the health implications of pregnancy and the return to work, and the way conditions such as menopause are only now beginning to be acknowledged in working environment at all. We look at what genuinely supportive workplaces do differently and why taking care of women in the workplace is a matter of their well-being, not merely of procedure. The topic of women's nutrition runs through all this discussion as an important thread. Together, we look at how a woman's nutritional needs change across her life and how good nutrition supports everything from energy to recovery to long-term resilience, but always as one part of the larger picture, connected to her circumstances rather than separated from them. And throughout, we widen the context to consider the social determinants of health, the way income, education, caste, geography, and gender shape what care a woman can reach and what she cannot. We work with real cases and real data, much of it drawn from specific context of India, though the insight we will gain is relevant far beyond any one region. We also look critically at the information environment women navigate every day, the marketing, the diet culture, the half-truths online that fill the space where good guidance should be. My aim is that you finish not only knowing more, but thinking more clearly, able to ask better questions and to tell sound evidences from confidence noise. So who's this module for? We have tried to design it for a wider group than you might expect. It is of course valuable for students of public health, medicine, nursing and social sciences who want a grounded interdisciplinary understanding of a subject too often taught in fragments. But it is equally for people already doing the work. Community health workers, counselors, teachers, human resource and workplace well-being professionals, and anyone running programs or services for women who want to sharpen the thinking behind their practices. It is also for people whose interest is personal rather than professional. If you care for a family, if you are navigating your own health, or if you simply want to understand the forces shaping the well-being of women around you, you will find a great deal here that speaks directly to your life. You do not need a medical background to begin. You need curiosity and a willingness to question things that are usually taken for granted. What I hope you take away is threefold. First, knowledge that you can trust. A clear, current and connected understanding of women's health that you can rely on and explain to others. Second, a way of seeing. Once you start noticing how the body, the mind, the workplace and the wider world are tangled together, you cannot unsee it. And that perspective will serve you far beyond this particular subject. And third, perhaps most importantly, a sense of why this work matters. Because when a woman's health is genuinely supported in all its dimensions, the effects ripple outwards in ways we are only beginning to measure. Into her family, her work, her community, and the generations that follows. Caring properly for women's health is one of the quietest, most powerful forms of change we have. It rarely makes headlines, but it changes everything. I won't pretend this module has all the answers. The questions it raises are difficult and some of them are uncomfortable. But I can promise you that the time you spend here will be the time spent on something that genuinely matters and that you will leave thinking differently than when you arrived. I would be glad to have you join me. Thank you for listening and I hope to see you on the course.